I was live just a few minutes ago, but my phone was dying, so I had to grab my charger. So I'm back. And I was talking about that the topic for this live tonight is May You Live Until You Die. I did not coin this phrase, but I absolutely love it. It actually comes from this band called Lord Huron. They're an indie band that started, I think they started up in 2010, but their first album came out in 2012, I believe. And I found them about a year ago in one of the darkest times of my life. They literally helped me get through last winter. It's so powerful. Um, the album's called Long Lost, and so it kind of builds on their other album, which I've yet to listen to all the songs I need to. But their second album, really, I think both Strange Trails and Lonesome Dreams are both kind of westerny as well, and they set up some lore with those albums, and they he essentially creates these other universes or other um, kind of worlds, and he created this Western cowboy, and that's one of the characters that they incorporate into Long Lost. But essentially, Long Lost is about this studio called Whispering Pines, and the cool thing is that Ben Schneider, the leader, he's an absolute genius. They're all geniuses, but I believe like all the ideas and the majority of the ideas come from him, and he mixes like reality with fantasy. So they bought this studio, and it's actually called Whispering Pines. It's a real life studio out in California, the redwood forest, sequoia forest. And he said that they thought that it was built in the early '70s, but they didn't really know much about the history of it. So they were like, "Hey, let's create our own history." So they basically created all these different artists, these characters that quote unquote made songs that there over the years. We're talking like I'm guessing 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. At least that's kind of the vibe and the inspiration and complexity that this album pulls from is those decades. I would say heavily 50s and 60s because it's very much it's like a mix of the old classic western kind of country sound of the 60s, a little bit of rock and roll from the 50s, and then you have that mixed with the new of like um, retro wave, a lot of synths, electronic sounds. So, and then one of the main characters that they created, his name is Tubbs Tarbell, and so the lore of this album kind of centers around him. He was the old manager slash producer, I think, that ran Whispering Pines all those years, and so he's seen a lot of these artists come and go and move on to bigger and better things, and you find out that he is past and he's a ghost and he's you know not moved on yet. He's still living within Whispering Pines, and he just can't let go of all those memories and good times, and he's not ready to move on yet. So also there's just the album kind of talks about different artists. There's just kind of some more general themes of like what comes with the territory of living that kind of lifestyle, like using drugs and like falling in love and betrayal and loss and lots of different things. So I just love it because it obviously embodies like Piscean themes because it's very transcendental, ethereal. Albums about exploring like not only like deep human emotions, but what's beyond this reality. You know, like other dimensions, other worlds. And like I said at the beginning, even more so, like the main theme is kind of about death and what that means, and kind of exploring it and what's beyond this. And so I would say, for me too, like the main kind of energetic, like Piscean's really big, the Pisces energy, but to me it's a fucus because like it's hard to put into words, but like Neptune kind of represents the transition, and it's more of like a natural death, not necessarily a sudden, unexpected death. So it's the transitioning of, you know, the soul leaving the body, and then like, so that's Neptune and Pisces, and then the Fucus in the 13th house is like the gateway of the portal back to source. So I personally believe we go back to source unless we choose to stay behind. You know, I think that's how there can be like quote unquote hauntings. And my Tub Star Bell has stayed behind because, you know, you've probably heard that there can be unfinished business. And yeah, I definitely think it's a possibility. But for the most part, everybody goes back to source, and then we decide if we're going to incarnate again. But I guess I just mostly wanted to talk about how kind of that's the May you live until you die. That's like to me the main slogan or like theme phrase for the whole album. It's just so powerful because um, Ophiuchus is a lot of things because it's the 13th sign. It's the only sign that represents ether, spirit, source. Yes, all the signs are connected to source, but Ophiuchus is special in that it's a more direct connection to source. And there's many, many different layers and nuances to Ophiuchus, but one of the things is that it represents eternity and it represents everything that has been, is, and will be. You know, all possibilities, all experiences. And to me, just that phrase, may you live until you die, it's, again, so powerful because it's representing that Ophiuchus energy of that. There's infinite potential in every single moment. So that's one side of it. But it's basically to value every single moment that you're experiencing it. And obviously, you know, it's really hard when we're in the middle of like really hard times, you know, whatever it may be. You know, there's people out there suffering with chronic pain, those sort of things. So I understand that it's not necessarily easy to value those kind of moments, but I guess the best way to illustrate it is, you know, like if I'm 31, so it's kind of like there was a time when I was 5, there was a time when I was 8, there's my high school years. Those are all really Ophiuchus is down to every moment, like every second represents every moment in time, but to kind of, I guess, give a little more context to make it a little bit easier to understand, you can think of those as eras. And you had you lived a certain place, you had certain people in your life. Like for instance, you know, a lot of people are able to carry on those childhood relationships. On the other hand, a lot of people, after high school and they go to college or whatever, get married. Those people far away, and you can, in those moments, like when you're little and like even as a teenager or whatever, there were certain people that I had in my life that I thought I would never lose them, like they would always be part of my life, and you just never know. Nothing's guaranteed. That's kind of that's the beauty and the pain of it that a fucus brings to life, is that everything is possible, but nothing's guaranteed because of free will and also destiny. Things our souls set up ahead of time, and some people you're only meant to know, for a short time, and once you learn those lessons, it's time to move on. But for me, like, I'm a life path 9, so I'm kind of like, once we're like friends, or like I allow you into my life, it's like ride or die. It's like forever. So that's kind of the dualistic nature of a 9, is that that's what we're learning this life, is to let go. So digressing a little bit, but still somewhat related, but it's essentially, the point is that each and every moment is special, and don't ever take it for granted. Because even if, let's just say, you have those childhood friends, through the years, the relationship changes, and your teenage years are different from those years when you were little, for all sorts of different reasons. And then, if you both get married, that changes that dynamic tremendously, because you have these other people involved. And or you can look at it from the perspective of yourself and your parents. When you're a child, that dynamic is completely different than when you're a teenager, and then once you're an adult, and then once you hit, middle age, and now your parents are getting into their older years, the dynamic can completely change. For some people, the roles reverse, and they end up taking care of the ones who used to take care of them. So those are just a couple examples, but that's just kind of what I wanted to talk about, and is don't ever take any moment for granted. I remember even before I knew anything about astrology, I just like somewhat was conscious of it. It was probably more subconscious, but I was somewhat conscious of, even as a young child, that to like always value each and every moment. And I'm not saying that to like brag or anything. I just have my South Node in the 13th house, so I just, and Cancer as well, so I'm just very sentimental and like nostalgic. And so I just think I had that knowing of like each and every moment is special and it'll never come again. So that's kind of what I just want to talk about tonight, and I would highly recommend you check out Lord Huron's Long Lost, and just be taken on this wild emotional adventure. And the cool thing is that in addition to the album, and there's music videos to illustrate the music, they also created some bonus quote-unquote episodes of Whispering Alive from Whispering Pines, which was a show that Tubbs Tarbell in the universe, he had this show that aired, and so it's a combination of seeing the old artists over the years playing, and the other really cool thing is they have this blur of their face because that's the other big thing, which is very Piscean Neptune, is that unless somehow we're um, immortalized through history or whatnot, most of us are forgotten after 3 or 4 generations. It's not to say we're forgotten. When I say we, like our human, this human incarnation. That's not to say that the universe records it in the Akashic records, but for the most part, humanity forgets us after a while, and so they're illustrating that, and all you see all these artists and their faces blurred because over time, like even Tubbs Tarbell, his memory's gotten kind of jumbled up because they have proven that even with science, when you recall a memory, your brain changes it slightly each time from how you remembered it originally. And so, yeah, you see the artists, um, the ghosts of the artists playing in the studio, but then you also see Lord Huron, and they're like revamping and recovering some of these songs and putting in their own style as well. So it's this really cool mix, and yeah, it's such a powerful. It's one of the most powerful really things I've been able to experience, let alone like album music, and it's just made a very huge impact on me, and it's got me, like I said, through some of the hardest times in my life, and it's just I've never had something other than maybe the movie Inside Out. I've never had like an album or music or visuals really express how I feel like on the inside, like how my mind works and whatnot, like what I think about. Because a lot of it is hard to even express in words, and so that's why I say he's a genius. They're all geniuses. So yeah, this isn't meant to like be depressing or anything. It's just kind of more of like an awareness. Um, Again, just to value every single moment because it'll never come again. Value every single era or season of life because you just never know when things will change and relationships change and dynamics change and you change as a person and you just value every single moment. May you live until you die. All right, take care, everybody.